Let's get onto kind of my main football topic here I want to talk about is a wish list of rumors that I would like to hear coming out of spring practice. Just we always end up hearing little nuggets, whether it's on various message boards or just through the rumor mill on social media, whatever it is, of maybe these guys are doing really well, or this guy got hurt, or something like this. And obviously not interested in hearing anything about any major players or any player at all getting hurt. But the number one wish list rumor that I want to hear coming out of spring camp is that a second cornerback has emerged as a clear contender for the starting spot. It is no question the starting corner, the number one starting corner on this team is Jontez Williams. No question about it. It's not really a discussion, and he was very, very good last year. Ended up starting a bunch of games toward the end of the season. He was great. He's absolutely earned every little bit of that number one starting spot on the depth chart. Behind him is a lot of inexperience because you lost Darian Porter and you lost Miles Purchase, both of which played a ton of snaps for Iowa State. So there's a few different names that have been there. The obviously the wild card is the one we talked about last week during our state of the program episode about the corners and safeties, which was Ben Nagoye, switching from wide receiver to corner. I don't know if he'll be ready to play this season. He would something incredible and remarkable would have to happen, I think, for him to start game one as the second corner. If he does that, then look out, because he's going to be an incredible player. But there's a few other guys in there that have a chance to jump up. Right now there's just so much inexperience there that I wouldn't call it concern, but I would call it just a curiosity, because if you can lock up that second spot, I think the guy that would probably be like my betting favorite, if you were going to call that, would be Trey Bell. Who is a transfer in, I believe from Ball State, if I remember correctly. But I think right now, he just because of his experience, I think he's a guy that has a great shot at getting that other starting spot at corner. There's a few freshmen as well, but I think right now he would be my betting favorite for that. Of course, it's just betting favorite's got a little bit of a touchy subject still, but Quentin Taylor would be another one. I think that he played a little bit last year. Kyjon Cummings Coleman, a few younger names there, but right now Trey Bell is the junior transfer from, I believe, is Ball State. That hopefully I'm not mixing that up, but he's my guy right now. I would put some chips in on him being the second corner coming out of spring. But just right now there's so much inexperience there. There's so many new faces in that room that I just am not 100% sold on any one guy. Let's see. Did he get this? Trey Bell? Oh, sorry. Trey Bell came from Lindenwood. That's what I was saying. I don't know why I was thinking Ball State. I think they were looking at another guy from Ball State, but he didn't end up committing. But Trey Bell came from Lindenwood, is what it was. But he's got good size at 6'3", 191. I mean, that's good size. If he's got the athleticism and the head on his shoulders to do that, I think that is a good fit there physically anyways. But as always, and I would say it's defense and the secondary especially, it's all about the brains and the head on your shoulders and being a smart football player more than it is about being an athletic football player. So that's my number one wish list rumors. I want to hear about a second corner that's starting to pop up and be like, okay, this guy's really turning heads. Rumor wish list number 2 is that Xavier Townsend and Chase Soul are as good as advertised. So Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend, two transfer receivers coming in this year. Xavier Townsend from UCF, Chase Soul from East Carolina. And I would say beat out a lot of programs to get both of these guys. And I think there are dynamic receivers. I know Chase Soul was wanted quite a bit by Florida and Miami. Xavier Townsend was a big-time athlete, actually committed to Iowa State for a bit coming out of high school as a running back or a wide receiver, who kind of was up in the air a little bit, then obviously ended up going to UCF and then played 4 games last season, essentially played his redshirt games last season before then hopping in the transfer portal and then coming here, obviously. So with the departure of Jalen Knoll and Jaden Higgins, I was just looking for guys at the receiver spot. There's talent on the roster there, but bringing in guys, experienced guys like Sol and Townsend, I think those are two massive gets. Yeah, I think in terms of the passing game, I think those are massive, massive gets. Especially Xavier Townsend having played in high school with Rocco Becht, so they are very familiar with each other. And Townsend is a great athlete. Great. He's an A tier athlete in college football. He is a guy that if you get the ball in his hands, he can do really fun things with it. Chase Soul is a bigger body, much like a Jaden Higgins, where he can run routes over the field, but I think he's best when you can get him vertical, especially, and you can let him use his size to bully defenders out a little bit. He is dangerous after the catch too. He's an effective runner after the catch. I would love to hear that these two guys are as good as advertised, because I think based on their tape at their previous schools and just the way that the way that their athleticism and their size fits within Iowa State's offense, I think they are a fascinating wide receiver duo going into next season. And I would argue, on paper right now, one of the best duos again in the Big 12 going into 2020 into the 2025 season, because obviously last season Iowa State had the best duo in college football in terms of production of two receivers. They had 2,000-yard receivers, and they were the most productive two in college football. So you'd like to follow that up with two really good guys, and Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend are obviously very good candidates to do that. Excellent athletes. I think they're good kids. And I think they fit really nicely in what Iowa State likes to do, because Chase Soul and Xavier are, I said in my mind, as far as play style goes, are 1-to-1 replacements for Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. Townsend's a little bit bigger than Jalen Knoll, but not a lot. But can do a lot of the same things that Jalen could. He's very similar athletically, and can really be a big physical receiver that can catch balls anywhere around the field too. So I think this is a great fit. I would love to hear that these two are turning heads in camp. And even if it's not specifically these two, I mean, you could really expand this point out to, I want to hear that there are some receivers that are really impressing the coaches. Um, Obviously it's early. Anybody can turn it on in spring camp, but you got to follow it up through summer workouts and into fall camp, and then obviously when the lights come on in the fall, especially when the lights come on in Dublin, Ireland, that's when you need them to show up. But there's a number of guys on the roster that I think are interesting. Isaiah Alston would be a guy I'd love to hear. Eli Green, I'd love to hear that those two have really turned it on in their second year in the program. Yeah, gosh, Michael Parks is another guy there. Brett Eskildson played some last year. There's a lot of names in this room that I really, really like. Maybe Daniel Jackson is healthy and can do something. Of course, he's actually not. Now that I'm looking at it online, Daniel Jackson is not on the spring roster. Oh no, there he is. He's right there. So maybe Daniel Jackson is when he's healthy there. Dominic Overby played a number of games last year. He's a really intriguing athlete with really great size that I think could absolutely make a big jump this spring. Lots of guys. I'd love to hear any two guys, but I think Xavier Townsend and Chase Soul are probably the most ready to just step in and be really good in the offense. But it would be, I'd love to hear about those two specifically in the spring and just see how they're fitting in, especially because, like I said, Xavier played with Rocco Becht in high school, so you would think there should be some natural chemistry there. Number 3, I would love to hear that we do indeed have an embarrassment of riches at linebacker. I talked about it last week in the state of the program for the linebackers, and I've said this a number of times throughout the end of last season, through the end of last season and coming into this season, that while the snake bitten linebacker room of 2024 could not stay healthy, consistently had guys missing, guys out, and having to play, true freshman walk-on middle linebackers, for dozens of snaps in a football game. That was going to, the silver lining of all that was it could pay off in 2025, where now you have a room with 8, 9, 10 guys that have started games and played significant snaps and played good snaps. There wasn't any linebacker that played last year that I was like, oh shit, this guy's not good. He's not a Big 12 linebacker. He can't play. There wasn't anybody that played last year that I felt like that. Maybe the one that was caused me some concern was Jacob Ellis, but he has since transferred. But you have gosh, you have a lot of guys in this room that have played so many snaps, and you get back, you didn't have Will McLaughlin for most of last year. Will McLaughlin is healthy. Caleb Bacon is healthy. Carson Willett should be healthy-ish. Caleb Brazina is healthy. John Klosterman is healthy. You have so many guys coming back next year that you can get really creative with your personnel groups. You can keep guys fresh, keep them healthy, and you can afford to move Caleb Bacon down to the line of scrimmage or Caleb Brazina or whoever. You can afford to move a guy or two down to the line of scrimmage to be an extra pass rusher to help out that group and feel very comfortable with who else you got sitting back. You don't need to have Caleb Bacon sitting in coverage all the time, playing there. It's not like he's a bad coverage linebacker, but he's an elite edge rusher. And you would love to have him be able to focus on being an edge rusher when applicable. And with this group, you should be able to do that whenever you want because of how much experience you have in that room and frankly, how much talent you have too. Because there's other guys that didn't play a lot last year that I think are really promising. Mason Miller is a guy that I touted coming out of high school that I thought this is your next Mike Rose. This is your guy. The Caleb Brazina and Mason Miller could be the next great Iowa State linebacking duo. And he didn't really play a whole lot last year, partially because he was just on his redshirt year, and I think he may have been banged up a little bit. But there's so much talent in this room and so much experience that I would, I want to hear what the rumor that how I want to hear it worded is that Iowa State is so deep at linebacker that they're working on some more exotic blitzes and things like that. They're really looking on some really interesting things that you can do with that kind of depth that most teams can't do because they don't have that kind of depth at that position group. So I would love to hear more about the overall linebacking room, especially just how talented and experienced they are and seeing what they think they can do with a guy like Caleb Bacon or like Will McLaughlin or even a Bo Goodwin that got to play a bunch of snaps last year and play good snaps. And then my fourth rumor wish list here is related, which is that we've got pass rushers that are showing promise. Will the pass rushers come from the linebacker room? Is it a Caleb Bacon? Is it a Will McLaughlin? Is it a Bo Goodwin? Or is it someone on the defensive line? You brought in two edge rushers in Vontroy Malone. Actually, you wrote in three: Vontroy Malone, Tamatoa McDonough from Yale, and Cannon Butler from UNI. I don't know if any of these guys are ready to play right away or not. They've got experience, obviously. I mean, I would think Cannon Butler at 6'6", 241. He's got the size for sure. He transferred here for his last season in college football. So I would think he came here thinking that he can, challenge for a starting spot and make a difference. So I would say it obviously brought him in not just for depth, but knowing that last year the pass rush just wasn't very good. And you want to bring in as many competent bodies into that room as you can find to see what you can get for edge rushers. Then there's a freshman, Jack Limbaugh, came in from Algona. I know they really like him. Trey Verdon, Malik's brother, Charlie Wallabin. There's a few interesting pass rusher names in the freshman class, but you get into who's already there. Samuel Same is a guy that I know that people have been kind of waiting to see him break out a little bit because he's got really, really good size. Jace Gilbert, redshirt freshman from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Another guy I think has a great chance of doing some interesting things. Kenny Iziogu has played a bunch of snaps. There's a lot of guys in that room that you want to see step up and not just be a promising player at the edge or at the defensive end spot, but can really be a game changer. Because Iowa State hasn't had a real true game wrecker since Will McDonald, essentially. Yeah, I mean, really, yeah, I'd say really, really since Will McDonald was the last time I would say had a true game wrecker in as a pass rusher where the defense has to know where that guy's at on the football field. And then that guy's presence frees up other people, frees up other rushers up through the middle, whether, it's a blitzing middle linebacker like a Brazino or something like that. And makes the defense's job a lot easier, knowing that even in a 3-down front, you can send that guy against a right or left tackle and he's just going to zip right around him and he's got no shot. You know, they haven't had a game record from like that and since Will McDonald left. Do they have a guy like that on the roster right now? I don't know. Will McDonald himself was only mid to low 3-star recruit coming out of high school. He hadn't played the position very long, but was just a good athlete basically, and he turned into a first round NFL draft pick. So guys can come out of nowhere. There isn't necessarily a guy that I've seen play so far that has gotten significant snaps so far that I'm looking at and saying like, oh, this guy's gonna jump off the page. But like I said, Samuel Sama and Kenny's Yogo have played lots of snaps and they have good size. Keenan Butler is obviously very experienced. He's got good size as well. 6'6", 241 is a good size. He's got lots of experience at a good football program in UNI. Will that translate over to the Power Five where he's got he's got, this is his last year in college football. This is, he doesn't have 2 years to, he doesn't have a year to get into the to get into the system and then the second year take off. He's got one shot at this, which means that he's got to come in and kick ass right away. I mean, he's got no choice but to do that. Otherwise, he's going to waste his last year of college football not playing. So, that's a guy on purely on the basis of him, quote unquote, being, to use a baseball term, him being in a contract year. I guess it's kind of a football thing too, but in general, him being in a contract year, essentially, that if he wants to play in, if he wants to play football beyond college, this is his chance to do that and to make a mark in his last season in college football. So, he's a guy to look out for on purely on the basis of this is his last shot. This is he should be plenty motivated to be an effective pass rusher there. So, lots of interesting names there, but I want to hear that there's guys popping out a little bit, that I want to hear that there's guys that they're interested in, that they're excited about going into spring practice.